Hi, this is Dr. Jose Pla with PepiPets. Today, we're going to have a conversation with Mr. Evan Ardell, who's in the financial services industry. We're going to be talking about the creation of pet trusts. There is a sad reality that many pets are going to outlive their owners, and it becomes our responsibility to make plans for our beloved animals after we have passed away or if we become incapacitated. I hope that you find this segment helpful and that it stirs a conversation with your family and loved ones on your desires for the future care of your pet. I'm very happy today to be able to speak to Evan Ardell, who is with Certified Financial Services in Paramus, New Jersey. Evan and I met actually at a local business meeting, breakfast. I was attending as a invitee of the community for PepiPets, and as the different business owners were getting up and talking a little bit about their companies, and we were chit-chatting, we quickly recognized that Evan provides a service of creating pet trusts for the care of pets after the parents or owners have passed away. I'm currently handling or the trustee for such a pet. We got together, we started talking, and I mentioned to Evan that I would love to have him on a podcast, be able to ask him some questions. So Evan, thank you very much for joining me today. Can I just ask that you talk a little bit about who you are and what your company does?
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. My name is Evan Ardell, and I'm a registered representative with Certified Financial Services in Paramus, New Jersey. I'm also a lifelong pet parent and a supporter of animal welfare. My company, Certified Financial Services, helps individuals, couples, families, and owners of small businesses make intelligent choices about their money.
All right. So given that this is a pet podcast, you said you're a pet parent. Tell me about your pets.
Sure. Well, for the past several decades, in fact, I've had pets, mostly cats, in my care at home, up to 3 at a time. And I would say the average amount of time that the cats have been with me, in other words, their lifespan, longevity, has been upwards of 18 to 20 years. I find that when I keep them indoors, that their lives tend to be longer and their quality of life is better too. In addition to that, I'm also a supporter of animal welfare, and I do things like volunteering to local animal welfare organizations, animal shelters, and I also donate my time and financial resources to help them.
Okay, so that's where your exposure to the animals that are, you and I were talking about surrendered animals, and we're going to get to that a little bit farther along.
Sure. Yes.
But so certainly you're passionate about this. You do work at shelters, you work for humane organizations.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about exactly what is a pet trust? That's something that maybe a lot of people are unfamiliar with.
Yeah, well, a pet trust is actually a legal instrument that persons could set up as part of their estate plan. And what it does is it encapsulates funds that are earmarked specifically for the ongoing care of pets. Just as you would set up a trust for a human, a person, it's a way of keeping funds together for one specific purpose, and so that those funds are used for the well-being of one or more pets. And it's created by the way, by an estate planning attorney, which I'm not. I'm actually registered representative, so I would handle the finance end of things, anything pertaining to the financing of it. But as far as the creating of a trust, that would be done by an estate planning attorney.
Okay, so is it safe to say that it's kind of a will for pets, but that it includes monies that are specifically allocated for that? Is that a simple way
It's
of putting it?
Yeah, it's really not part of a will. It's just, as I said, a legal instrument that
Sure.
specifies that monies are set aside for the ongoing care of a pet. And in most cases, this is when the pet parent is either deceased or has become incapacitated due to physical or cognitive disability. And then what's typically done in this case is they would assign one or more people as guardians for those pets to rehome them, and then that the expenses uh, uh, that would be typically involved for the ongoing care of a pet, such as food and grooming, veterinary care, and whatnot, those would be funded by the Pet Needs Trust.
Gotcha. So, when a pet owner comes to you, I'm sure that they've thought about this. They're certainly looking for your advice. Uh, Based on your experience, from a who do you advise for pet owners to consider the kind of the key players? Who needs to be involved in this process um, that pet
Sure.
owners need to consult or they need to have conversations with?
Yeah, well, first of all, of course, the pet parents themselves um, are the key decision makers. And then they need to be consulting with close family members and or friends, or certainly their financial planner and their estate planning attorney, and even their veterinarian when decisions like this are being made.
Gotcha. And it's interesting because like I mentioned, I've been involved in these, and not many, just two in my career. But on both occasions, I was caught by surprise. I actually was unaware that I
Uh,
was named the trustee for a pet. I mean, I certainly took that role very seriously and
yeah,
carried out the wishes that I knew from my history with the pet owners. But it, like I said, in both cases, I received a phone call from a relative or from a lawyer stipulating that I was the trustee for a pet. Um,
yeah. Unfortunately, that happens more often than one realizes. Not just for pets, but even for humans as well, where somebody may discover that all of a sudden they've been named as the executor of an estate, or named in a will and things like that. They had no idea. So it's always a good idea if you're going to be assigning some uh, role or responsibility to a third party like that, that you speak to them ahead of time so that you get their assent and
sure.
cooperation on.
Yeah. And I would
And
add,
I'm
specifically on the children, if there's children, adult children, they need
yeah,
to absolutely, because typically they're the ones who are handling the estate, they're handling the decisions that are being made immediately after somebody has passed away. And there's a lot of there's not only grief, but there's um, decision about funerals and about making arrangement for the human, and it's not um it doesn't take us by surprise, I guess, that the animals kind of take a second place and sometimes are a little bit forgotten in those immediate
that's
24, 40
oftentimes,
hours.
yes, unfortunately, that's oftentimes the case, where all of the other things you just mentioned, as far as the grief process, funeral arrangements, and then, of course, the reading of the will, dispensing of the assets, and then it becomes, oh, by the way, there were these dogs or cats as well. What do we do with them?
Yeah.
We got to put the needs of the pets right up there at the top of the list, because they do require immediate care.
Yeah.
And in the case where somebody passes away, certainly, or can't care for their animals anymore, there has to be immediate intervention, because these are living sentient beings, and we have to find care for them right away. Now, I did want to also mention, if somebody is a pet parent and they don't have a family member or friend who they can count on, they can also turn to some of the animal welfare organizations, and reach out to them, because sometimes they do make special arrangements with pet parents as well to take care of their pets should they pass away.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that because we're very fortunate in northern New Jersey to
Mhm.
have a robust animal welfare, um, um, robust system of groups. There are countless groups that focus on not only some only on cats, some on dogs, but oftentimes even very specific needs for these animals.
Yep.
So in northern New Jersey, uh, if pet owners, just by talking to their veterinarians, can get the names and contact information for some of these organizations and kind of, establish a relationship with them, so that if in the event of a catastrophe, it could be like you said, it doesn't have to be that the pet parents have died. It could be overall health. It could be mental health, a
Yeah.
variety of things.
Yeah, physical or
Establishing that
cognitive impairment. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, that's really important. A question that I had for you is,
Mhm.
let's talk about the monies. I mean, what's typical? How much money do you see typically being allocated? How does somebody even start the process of trying to determine what funds are required?
Well, you have to estimate what your typical outlay is per pet, and that could vary between whether it's a cat, dog, or other animal, and then of course different breeds of each they have different requirements. But take a look at your annual outlay on average, and then multiply that out as to what it would typically cost. You have to take into account things like uh, pet food. There would be veterinary care, of course. There would be grooming in many cases, pet sitting, boarding, things like that are all part of the equation. And keep in mind also is that as a pet ages, just like in a human, their medical care costs typically do increase.
Oh, absolutely. I think the statistics in the humans, and I'm not a human doctor, but it's something like 60-70% of your lifelong health expenditures are spent in the last 8 to 12 months of your life. On a pet, I would venture to say that um, it's something similar. The last 18 months, 24 months of a pet's life tend to be substantially more expensive when we're dealing with chronic disease and multiple visits, sometimes surgical procedures. Uh, so it can get expensive.
Oh yeah,
And it was
yeah.
interesting when we started, you mentioned that your own pets, your cats, oftentimes live to the high teens, even to the low 20s. So truly understanding that this this process of having somebody care for your pets could be many years depending on their current age.
Yeah, and then typically when you're funding that, we'll say inside of a pet trust that I discussed earlier. Um, you know, take into account that not only do you want to make sure that the um, all of those other expenses that I just listed are covered, multiplied out over the life expectancy of that pet or multiple pets, depending on what it's for. But also, I think it's nice to include some like a stipend to the person who's going to be taking care of that pet as well. Because it's an added level of responsibility for them. So that's typically included as well.
Okay,
But
so basically
mhm,
compensating somebody for caring for your pets over the time. In one situation that I found myself, and it was interesting, the most recent pet trust that I'm still currently involved in
mhm,
was actually set up many years ago, to the point where when the pet owner passed away, the actual continued life of the pet was short. I'm in the process of closing the trust, but what happened in this case was that there was a lot of funds remaining in the trust
mhm.
after the pet had passed away. So fortunately, um, and appropriately, this pet owner had assigned a humane society that would be the beneficiary of those extra monies that were still remaining in the trust.
That's a fairly common scenario right there. It's, if there's anything in reserves after the pets have passed away, they could name one or more of these humane societies or other nonprofit organizations to receive the balance of what's left in the trust.
What's left in the trust, sure. So
Yes.
going back to these trusts, can you talk to me a little bit about what are the costs typically from a pet owner's perspective? What are they looking in
It
terms of?
varies. It varies, and again, this is something that I don't set up because I'm not an attorney. But an estate planning attorney is typically the one who would create the trust. And just based on some field research I did, these are run between $500, maybe $1,500.
Okay.
That range, depending on the particular attorney or law firm you're working with.
Okay. So certainly once again, pet owners should talk to their attorneys. And
Yes.
just as an aside, with the advent of all of these online legal document companies, is can this theoretically be done through a documents type sort, or are you aware of that, or
I'm
not?
aware of such companies. From a personal standpoint, I think you're far better off working with a qualified, competent attorney. I can't speak for the companies that you're talking, these online um,
Legal documents.
legal document
Yeah,
preparation firms. I'm not an authority on that at all, but I can state with confidence that you're better off, I would think, working with an attorney
sure.
directly on something who specializes in estate planning.
Yeah, and make sure you get it right.
Yes, exactly.
So let's talk about war stories. I mean, I'm sure that you've been involved with these. Anything you want to share with the viewers?
Well, I can cite, example, um, some statistics, which unfortunately are truly grim. Um, Based on a recent article from the ASPCA, in the US alone, over 900,000 animals are euthanized in animal shelters every year because they could not be rehomed within a reasonable amount of time, including approximately 42% of the dogs and 58% of the cats that are surrendered annually. There are many stories out there about pets that are surrendered to animal shelters when a pet parent dies and is no longer able to care for their pet because of a physical or cognitive impairment. Now, just keep in mind, just as we would have a well-structured plan in place for our own children in case something should happen to us, we really should do the same thing for our pets.
Yeah, I get approached. I mean, the statistics, like you say, are grim. I work with multiple shelters, and the the reality is that the shelters are overflowing, and everybody who's looking to adopt typically is looking to adopt a young, healthy puppy, a young, healthy kitten,
Kitten or puppy.
and the prospect of adopting an older animal, especially if it has medical needs, it's close to impossible. So it really falls on the responsibility of the pet owner to ensure for the pet, for their the continued care for their pet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, going back to make sure that we get these right. I was involved in a situation where
Mhm.
the pet parent, through the trust, made a slight error in naming which humane society was actually going to get any remaining funds. And it was unclear which of two humane
Mhm.
societies was going to receive the funds, which then led to a can of worms.
Mhm.
So yes,
In that
make
case,
sure
I
that
think,
those documents are revised
yeah,
and
I
checked.
would I would say it's probably best in that case that not only the name, specific name, the address, but also the EIN, the entity identification number of that particular organization, to make it as unique as possible, so that eliminates any questions then.
Question. Sure. And in this case, most of these are non-for-profit, so that they do have
Yes,
an EIN. Yeah,
exactly.
you know what? I didn't think about the EIN. That would have solved it. The names were similar, and to the point where I was actually deposed by lawyers because it was in this one specific case a substantial amount of money. Listen, Evan, I really thank you for joining me this morning. Once again, we're here at PepiPets. We're trying to help pet owners provide better care, and this is something that most people either don't think about, don't want to think about, haven't given it the time. But it really is important. If we talk about our pets as being our children, like you said, then we have a responsibility to make plans the same as we would for our children.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, Evan, I know that given that you're in the financial industry, that you have an obligation to basically give us some disclaimers that are required from your industry.
Well, first, let me just say, if anybody has any specific questions and would like to speak with me directly, let me give you my contact information. It should be appearing below, but it is as follows. If you need to reach me by phone, it's 201-394-6939, or you can email me at Evan, EVAN, Ardell, ARDELLE, at CFSLLC.com.
And just as a question, do you provide services only in New Jersey, or multiple states, regionally across the country?
Multiple states.
Multiple
They're literally
states.
across the country if need be.
Happy
Excellent.
Excellent.
And
and I apologize for that omission.
No problem. So hang on, let me just read this at the end, please. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Guest speakers and their firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by PASS, Guardian, or Certified Financial Services, and opinions stated are their own. Evan Ardell is a registered representative of Park Avenue Securities, LLC, PAS. Securities products are offered through PASS, member FINRA, SIPC. Certified Financial Services, LLC is not an affiliate or subsidiary of PASS or Guardian. 2022-147929, expiration 12/24. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. I hope we have a wonderful day. Look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.
Take care. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.